Did you hear that?
The tactical stealth genre has been in a strange spot since Hideo Kojima left the Metal Gear Solid series. However, this allows for unique interpretations of the stealth gameplay across different settings, such as Linceworks' ninja stealth game Origami 2. Now, developer Baby Robot Games is here to take on the task of delivering a stealth action experience called Ereban Shadow Legacy, which has honestly managed to immerse me in its sci-fi setting. With the pain points and frustrations of any stealth game still present, this world, the characters, and setting allow this game to have the potential to hopefully evolve into a series because I want more. Ereban Shadow Legacy's opening is kind of messy, but the design ultimately works if you stick with it. Players assume the role of Ayana, one of the last members of a dying race. She's arrived at a facility to have her powers tested, but you don't realize the scope of these experiments until after the tutorial. Surprisingly, the trial-like structure of the opening does not mirror the semi-open world design of the game after you leave. As you travel to new locations and make contact with various resistance fighters, the explorable world becomes ambitiously large. To tell this story, the developers utilize these large open spaces to deliver dialogue as you make your way to a marker. However, oftentimes you'll trigger an event so the trek back to your base or out of a dungeon changes with new enemy placements and some environmental alterations. It keeps exploration fresh, even upon return trips, with stage-based chapter layouts that break up missions while still allowing you the freedom to take on side missions at your own pace. As for the narrative, there's plenty to spoil here. Even in the early hours, the writing doesn't hold back secrets from the player. Still, it's a supporting cast that ends up growing on you, which is further explored through hidden collectibles that dive deeper into the lore of the world. There's plenty to immerse yourself in, and the writing doesn't lean too far into the sci-fi genre. You know, like when you need a degree in physics to understand the nuances of the writing. Sure, we're dealing with mechs and an evil corporation, but the narrative is still very human, which is further explored through the morality system that punishes or rewards you depending on how you see it for killing. So, let's get into the gameplay. As Ayana, you have a few special abilities. The most prominent and used is the ability to sink into the shadows and avoid dangers or scale walls. Using the ability in combat evolves as you gain access to new skills. Now, I know I mentioned that taking down human enemies comes with consequences, but the robot enemies are free game. While you can avoid combat, and you probably should for the most part considering there's no hand-to-hand combat options, enemies do drop loot. So if you're not exploring every nook and cranny looking for scrap materials to craft and upgrade abilities, you probably should plan to sneak behind enemies and take them out silently. Getting caught has a few different downsides. First off, you gain an alarm counter, which affects your stage score. Don't worry, you can replay stages. Next, if you're spotted, you will likely get caught because you're slower than the enemies. So, my advice is just don't get caught. I know, that's easier said than done, but luckily you can unlock abilities to hide bodies and eliminate threats faster. But all of these actions have cooldowns and limited usage, which creates a super satisfying player experience of strategy and planning that is often overlooked in stealth games. Typically, there's a skill that can be abused, but with limited uses, that's kind of mitigated here. Next up, the shadow crawl is usable for platforming. Now, platforming does take some getting used to. My advice is just don't touch the camera while you're scaling the walls. When climbing, the camera will pull back, but your instincts will want to compensate for that. But the moment you try to fight back against the camera, it'll put you in a compromised position. I really liked how the game created shadow puzzles for discovering secrets. While the story doesn't test your intelligence, combative strategy and traversal are where the skills will be put to the test. The issues I've experienced with Ereban Shadow Legacy are pretty surface level. Frustration stems from limited resources, weird checkpoints, and control. With limited resources, I find the crafting tables are placed in very awkward places, but there aren't enough resources to upgrade each time you encounter one. It just gets annoying running into 3 crafting tables in a row and not having close to enough resources to actually upgrade. And like any stealth game, it's also possible to cheese your way through some missions, but you don't have to play this way. I'd just say that the game can have some weird dips in difficulty, even in the late stages. The controls seem to be improving with every update, so I doubt this will be an issue moving forward. Graphically, the game's world has a 3D meets cel-shaded look. The contrast is gorgeous and almost feels like a unique take on the neon cyberpunk aesthetic. Still, I should note that I completed the game in about 7 hours, and while there are options and reasons you might want to return, I'm okay with the conclusion, but that doesn't mean I don't want more. There's still plenty of room for refinement if this series continues, and I hope it does. The foundation is fantastic, but I'd love to see the developers take feedback on level design and puzzle elements to hopefully flesh out the world and characters. Ereban Shadow Legacy is an ambitious stealth action game that takes huge chances to creatively approach this genre without taking too much from its inspirations. The result is an immersive experience that sticks to the landing. The creative stealth system provides unique ways to approach navigation in large open stages, and the campaign provides moments of emotional depth for its lead and supporting cast. While the topics of the story aren't anything to write home about, the world building is enough to know that there are more adventures to explore here, and that's what I can't wait to see. Regardless, I had a nice time playing Ereban Shadow Legacy, and you might too. Noisy Pixel is giving Ereban Shadow Legacy a 7.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by Kerber Gamers, providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.